Episode 40, A Good Woman. Natalie went home and thought with frustration about starting to look for another job from scratch. She felt depressed. She had already had to accept that she would be working for a small firm rather than a major well-known company, and now this restructuring had happened. Liam, seeing that his mom was not her usual self, pulled at her sleeve in his familiar way and asked in a concerned voice,
"Mommy, what happened? Did someone upset you today?"
Natalie's heart filled with warmth when she realized Liam was worried about her. She crouched down and gave him a hug. "Liam, I might not have a job after all. I may not be able to support you anymore." She got emotional. She didn't want Liam to feel the burden she was carrying. He shook his head and said in a positive manner,
"It's okay, Mommy. Daddy can help raise me."
This acted on Natalie like a slap in the face. Angrily, she said, "Liam, you are not allowed to think or say that. His money belongs to him, and as a woman, I've to depend on myself, not spend another man's money. Do you understand?" Liam looked puzzled, so Natalie softened. "Of course, when you grow up and start earning money yourself, don't forget about your mother, okay?" She tried to coax him, but it obviously didn't convince the smart boy. Liam creased his forehead and looked at his mother. Then he said,
"Mommy, I am still young. I don't understand all this."
Bryce had returned home while Natalie and Liam were talking, and from the hallway he'd accidentally heard most of the conversation between mother and son. As he came into the room, he asked humorously, "So, this is how you educate your boy, huh?" Natalie hadn't expected him to be home so early and didn't know how much of the conversation he'd overheard. Embarrassed, she said, "I was only joking." He nodded and decided not to say any more. Her embarrassment somehow made him feel amused. When Liam saw Bryce, he ran to hug him, as if he hadn't seen him in a long time.
"Dad, you're home. I missed you a lot."
This intimate greeting from Liam already felt natural to Bryce somehow. He picked Liam up and asked in a very rare, gentle moment, "Are you hungry?"
Liam nodded and said, "I am really hungry. Mrs. Perkins said she'd cook me my favorite mac and cheese, but I wanted to wait for you to come home so we could eat together."
He looked at Bryce in anticipation, hoping he would eat with him. His eyes held a hint of longing. Bryce's heart softened when he looked at the boy. He suddenly realized that the boy must have longed for a father to sit down with for a long time. He smiled lovingly at Liam and said, "All right, kiddo, we'll eat together in a while." Natalie saw this gentle expression and was touched. Was this the same cold Bryce she'd known before? Mrs. Perkins came in. Seeing Bryce with Liam, she gave them a warmly affectionate look. She knew this father and son duo would definitely melt a lot of hearts wherever they went. Natalie was thinking the same thing. Somehow, since he got married, Bryce seemed to have matured into the fatherhood role a little. Mrs. Perkins, meanwhile, put the dishes on the dining table and called them to have dinner. When Natalie saw the table full of food, she felt humbled. There were lots of different dishes alongside Liam's mac and cheese. Fries, onion rings, salads, all sorts of things. It was like a banquet compared to what she was used to having. Liam's eyes lit up when he saw the food. He said sweetly to Mrs. Perkins,
"Wow, Mrs. Perkins, you're the best. This is great. You've made so much, and all of them are my favorite food."
Mrs. Perkins was beaming with joy. Her expression was affectionate. She said to him, "You're such a good boy. Eat up." Bryce said, "Mrs. Perkins, please come and eat with us." Mrs. Perkins had always been like a mother to him. When he was young, she looked after him most of the time, and she was considered not so much a maid or carer, but one of the family. She was a little hesitant to eat with them. Before Natalie had arrived here, she had often eaten with Bryce. But now that Natalie was Bryce's wife, and even though Natalie was easy to get along with, she didn't know whether Natalie would mind. Natalie saw her hesitation and guessed what she was worried about. Natalie, who didn't mind at all, said, "Mrs. Perkins, you've cooked so much food. We can't possibly finish all of these dishes without you. Please, come eat with us." Liam, clumsily but happily, carried a chair over for Mrs. Perkins, tottering comically under its weight. He called out anxiously,
"Mrs. Perkins, please come quickly. I can't hold on any longer."
She didn't hesitate anymore. She walked over to the dining table and sat down next to Liam to eat. From time to time while they were eating, Mrs. Perkins stole a look at Natalie from the corner of her eye. She finally felt at ease and thought, Mr. Bryce had found a good woman. She is sensible and doesn't act like a spoiled girl. She is far different from a lot of the rich women that have moved into the Clare family circle. As expected, Mr. Bryce has good taste. Bryce couldn't help but notice her admiring gaze on Natalie, and his expression became softer. Marrying this woman was quite a relief for him. It would save him a lot of problems. After dinner, Liam didn't bother his mother like he usually did, most likely because he was so happy. He played with his toys independently in the living room. Natalie, undisturbed, sat on the sofa, searching the web on her laptop. It seemed the likelihood of her staying at the company wasn't too high, so rather than wait for a disappointing outcome, she thought she might as well start looking for another job. Even though she had married Bryce, it was only a contract marriage, and this arrangement was only temporary. For many years, she had never relied on anyone to support her and Liam. She felt there was no reason to change her mindset. As Bryce walked past the living room, he saw Natalie engrossed in her laptop. He walked up behind her, looked at the laptop screen, and asked, "What are you doing?" Natalie, startled, turned around. She let out a long sigh. She said sadly, "I got a job offer a few days ago, but today I found out the company is restructuring. So I thought I should look for another job somewhere else."